Morning, Loretta, or it could be evening for other people somewhere else. But for us, it's morning in South Africa. And anyone who's watching the YouTube will see Loretta and I both got the blue memo. We both showed up in blue today. So I don't know what that means, but we'll see. So we're going to talk today about the mind, the mind and physical healing. But the mind is a superpower, can be an exceptionally powerful healing tool, not just if you're sick, but we are focusing this on people who are sick. But it can also bring you down, and it can help make you sick, or if you are sick, it can make it worse. So I want to just kick off by saying we're going to bring to you information that you've heard already. You've probably heard some of it from us already, and it's out there. But I encourage you and invite you to listen today with new ears, to listen to exactly what we're saying and how we say it. It took me many hours to take the information and distill it with what we're going to put out today from my own journey, because the essence of my journey, physical, mental, and spiritual, has been to harness the superpower of my mind, rather than letting it freak out and affect me negatively. I've got a toxic mind which needs a lot of this. So I'm only sharing that not to be too over vulnerable or to get your sympathy, but to tell you that you can take it on good authority, that if I put this together and we're putting it out, that it is the real stuff, because Antoinette needs to do this every single day of her life, every day. We all do, actually, but some of us more than others. And if I don't do it, I get physically ill. It goes very quickly to my body and it hits hard. So you can take everything and know that it comes from a place of being practiced, not just researched. On myself and with Loretta on herself every day. She has a different journey to me, but she also practices every day and brings this to her patients. So I hope that just listen to this with new ears, and really listen. So I'm going to start off with a few facts. We cannot separate and divide the body, the mind, emotions, and spirit. Full stop. We cannot divide them. To use the words of the Alexander people, like Gary Ramsay, they form a system. Okay, our bodies, our physical bodies, are part of that system. The thing is, we hear this, we meme it, we listen to podcasts about it, but until we really, really know this, with those new ears you're listening with, and until we really embody it and practice it, we are going to be physically sick, mentally not great, even if we don't realize it. And we very possibly are going to have a whole lot of things going down in our lives that we will see as fate, but are actually unknowingly our own creations, because it's a domino effect. Okay, there is a domino effect. So if you line up dominoes, everybody knows what happens if one falls. So the integration and no separation between body, mind, emotions, and spirit is a truth. Okay, we do repeat ourselves a lot, Loretta and I. And some people who have given us amazing feedback said we also waffle a bit, but I think sometimes we also just repeat things to make a point, actually. So just to go back to what we've already brought you and is also out there, these are just facts I'm going to name right up front before we dive into a conversation. There is a deep center at our core, that part of us, which is who we really are, the higher self, the God self. And we all know, if we followed any kind of path of this, that when we can drop into that center, there is stillness. That's where the magic happens. That's where our intuition fires. But knowing this and really embodying it and living it are two different things. And the reason why we may know this, but we can't live it, we've put this out before, but I'm just going to quickly summarize. Our brains are hardwired to freak out and to overreact. That is just a neurological thing. It comes from way back when we had to be in fight and flight to hunt. We've gone through all that in previous episodes. I'm not going to repeat it. But we have to just know that essentially we are evolutionary built like that. The brain is wired that way, A. And B, so that fight and flight reflex is an automatic way our brain functions unless we change that. We've also been taught and conditioned to live very reactively in our modern world. And I'm talking about like the last 100 years, okay? So with that as a background, just to say the mind is, just to remind you again, the mind is powerful, very powerful, far more than you know, but either way, the mind can work against you or the mind can work for you. Now, if you're sick and we're going on and on about this, you're going, well, I'm sick, and what has this got to do with me? Well, every single thing we bring now, I'm going to bring back before we end to the physical body, and especially if you're very physically ill. But believe me, this is going to be a superpower for you, what we bring, or if you can't harness the superpower, it's going to make your body worse, actually, and the whole process. So the thing is this, until we know this stuff, until we realize what's going on in our minds and how it affects us, we don't know what we don't know. So most people don't realize actually that their minds are just running a whole lot of thoughts over and over and over again. And honestly, I didn't know this. Everyone knows my cancer journey and where my healing lay. And the very, very, very first thing I had to do was try and stop and become a witness to my mind. I had absolutely no idea how my mind was running a perpetual thoughts, hundreds of them over and over and over again, but they were in the background because I was a very busy person. I was very busy making things happen. I was living a very full life. And I was meditating and I was doing all those things, but I had no idea until I embarked on this journey how hard it is, A, to observe the mind. It's not something you just show up to do. It's like the mind just... But when I was able to start observing my mind and taking a witness position to it, start seeing my mind kind of separate from myself, I was absolutely aghast and astounded that my mind would firstly start with a thought, and then there would be another thought about that thought. But a few minutes down the line, the thought process had already changed from that particular thing to something else. So let's say my dog had run in the road, and now I'm upset because I was stressed. He nearly got run over, and then I'm a bit upset with myself. The next thing, 10 minutes down the line, I've been observing my mind, or maybe 3 minutes. I'm the worst person on the planet. It's gone way beyond the dog. It's gone to this, it's gone to that. And then the next thing, it's very true that monkey mind is like a freaking wild cage, hectic show. But the thing is, until you can really see it in all that truth, it's just going to keep on doing that. And the other thing I saw, and I still see, because my mind is the place where I really have to do the work, as is most human beings, is I can be on a beautiful beach. I can think I'm out there in the fields looking at beautiful flowers and being present. I can be doing the Buddhist thing to wash my dishes while I'm washing them. And the next thing, I've broken a glass, or I've tripped over something, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I was not present right now with this beautiful sunrise. I was not present washing my dishes. I was back in my mind. And the mind then is starting to do all kinds of things, which normally end up with a whole lot of freak out, which is mostly not true. The mind actually mostly just lies. Okay, so we're not going to be hard on our minds. We're just going to be honest. The mind will tell you a whole lot of stuff and worry about absolutely nothing until you break the glass, and then you go, oops, now I've really got something to worry about because I've stood on it and my foot's bleeding. But so, yeah, we are wired to freak out. We're going to look at how that affects our bodies, and we're also going to look at how you can bring your mind to being a good pharmacy so that it doesn't harm you and it doesn't make us sick. The thing is, firstly, to start being aware of what you're not aware of. And to be aware of this paradox that the mind can be used both ways, for good or for bad. The mind can be used to rewire our brains. The mind can be used to heal our bodies. But the mind can also run our show in a very negative way. So I'm just going to tell you a few more facts about the mind, and I can see Loretta making notes. I think she's going to, do you want to dive? She wants to dive in right now because I'm rabbiting on. I'm doing that waffly thing.
No. I just so that we don't have to like bring it all the way back again. Just to what you were saying about you have one thought and you have another thought and you have another thought. Before you know it, you're thinking about something completely different. It's because the mind doesn't stick to the facts. The mind interprets the facts and gives the facts meaning. So when Antoinette breaks a glass, the fact is she broke a glass. That's it. There isn't anything more than that. The data is the glass slipped out of her hand for whatever reason, and she broke the glass. The glass broke. But her mind will go, she broke the glass because she wasn't focused. She broke the glass because she's trying to do too many things at once. She broke the glass because she didn't do her meditation this morning. She broke the glass because she's just not diligent enough. And then it becomes she broke the glass because she's stupid. And then it becomes she broke the glass because she's inept. That's when you start making it mean something. And the mind is an expert at creating the meaning. So, there's a very popular saying that says pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. And it's true, but, it sounds so trite. It's like, oh, well, we're all responsible for our own suffering. Well, part of the reason why the suffering occurs is not because of the facts cause the pain. I broke the glass. It was my favorite glass. Even that it was my favorite glass. You see, it was already at the meaning. The glass is broken. That's the fact. All right. Everything else that follows from that is the meaning that the mind confers onto the fact. And it's that meaning that creates the suffering. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we need to learn how to harness our mind, which is what we're going to talk about today, especially when we're ill. Because when we're sick, of course, it's normal to be anxious about being sick. I mean, that's not abnormal whatsoever. But if you allow the facts, I have diagnosis X, to then expand into everything that may mean for you and about how your life is going to be, now you've gone down the route of the suffering. There's enough pain inherent in just the fact. Okay, so now Antoinette seems to have disappeared. So the other thing that I just wanted to say, based on what she said, I had a dog that was panting earlier, and I thought,
sorry, I am my gardener, although I told him not to, is busy cutting the lawn outside, and you won't be able to hear me. So Loretta, you've got lots to say. I'm gonna go.
All right. So the other thing that I wanted to say, based on this whole thing about what your mind does, is that your mind is, and Antoinette will mention it later, is it's constantly trying to fix a problem. It's constantly trying to find a solution. So when you, for example, have a diagnosis, your mind, even though you are not a doctor or a healer or you may not know what to do, or maybe you do know what to do, it's going to rabbit down finding you a solution. And the solution is usually around which doctor you need to see, which healing modality you have to do, what practices you have to do. And then again, it sets up all these expectations. So the mind immediately wants you to do something. And the truth is that the way in which we create, whether we want to create health, when we want to create health in any area of our life, is we think the mind will lead us to think that it's do. If you do something, then you'll be a certain way and then you'll have a certain thing. The truth is, it starts with the being. It starts with how are you being, because your being is going to dictate what actions you take. So if you allow the mind to run, you're going to start off with the doing based on what your mind thinks you need to be doing or should be doing or what you've been told you must be doing, rather than the being, which is connecting to that part of you that Antoinette said, that place of deep stillness inside you, where your intuition can start leading you. Antoinette, you wanted to say something.
So, sorry, firstly, I can't stop the lawnmowers because they're next door and the dog's barking, but it's either that or stop podcasting. So we're just going to carry on, excuse the noise. Yeah, Loretta, it's absolutely true, everything you said. I just want to add in two short things. I'm not going to talk for long. When you break the glass, yes, we don't want to make meaning of that. The mind always wants to, and then start down a rabbit hole and beating ourselves up. But what's been very critical for me, and I know this is important, is that to go, well, actually, I did break the glass, my favorite glass, because I wasn't present and I'm freaking out. But that's it. You stop it there. You go insight, got the insight. Sorry, glass, I'm going to miss you, but you're gone. It's okay. I've recognized that. That is important, because if we bypass that, then we're going to just carry on like breaking things and losing our keys. And so it's both, actually. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, 100%. Yes, quite. That's a very good point you make. It does. It's not about, but it's, okay, so I think the distinction here, in case you're confused, I'm just clarifying this actually for myself more, is that you broke the glass and you can have an insight as to why you broke the glass. You broke the glass because you were inattentive, or because you were thinking about 27 things at once, and that, actually, that you work better if you focus on a single thing. That's the insight that Antoinette just mentioned. When it goes beyond that is when we start ascribing meaning to like why it is you weren't focusing. So that is really, really important. So yes, we can get insights from things, but when we make those insights then start meaning things, we can also head down that rabbit hole. So it's a very valid point you make there, Antoinette.
We also have to be, it's the paradox, it's like riding a bicycle. It's the balance. So I am freaking out and I'm doing too many things and I'm going too fast and I'm multitasking and I break the glass. So I have to have the insight that if I hadn't been doing that, I probably wouldn't have broken the glass. And if I did, I did. But in this case, I broke the glass because of all of that. Without that insight, there's really no way to start seeing how the mind operates and to harness the mind for the better. And the other thing to add to what you've said, actually, you and I are much better when we chat than when I just voice off, is that in terms of making meaning out of a diagnosis or what step should we take next, it's absolutely critical, yes, in all of this, that our intuition and that higher self, our spirit, is present and calm. But that requires two things. A is working with the mind to a point where we can, because we do not automatically get into that space. So when I'm freaking out and I break the glass, I need to know I've been freaking out and that's why I broke the glass, and then exercise my mind to go, this can stop right now. I've got the insight, but I can stop it. And the intuition or that peaceful self comes back up. It's not an automatic state we can just live in until we're very well practiced. Okay. Some people live like that all the time, and that is an enlightenment, and that's where we're all heading. And when we get a diagnosis, I'm not disagreeing with you, Loretta. I'm putting
I know that
puzzle together. When we get a diagnosis, it is about not freaking out and dropping into that peaceful center and absolutely not just taking immediate reaction, because that's when we often don't do what's the right healing path. Like, we freak out when the doctor tells us we've got stage 4 cancer. He tells us we have to be whipped in for an operation tomorrow. We whip ourselves in. We believe everything he said. Our mind goes, sure, you better sort it out fast. You're in trouble. etc. And that's all natural. But I think what Loretta's speaking to, and Gary Ramsay speaks to it in all his episodes, which are still on the podcast, is that it's about learning to take the pause. But that's the mind, where the mind mastery comes in, and that's a lifetime of work. Start doing it now, about breaking the glass, and so that you don't have to wait till you've got a cancer diagnosis, because taking the pause is the hard part, to say, okay, the guy says I've got terminal cancer. Firstly, is that true? Secondly, do I have to do exactly what he says? Do I even have to freak out? I mean, this is easier said than done. But it's to be able to it's very hard not to freak out when you're sitting across, I know, somebody who's telling you you've got a brutal cancer, or when you're having an anaphylactic reaction like I do at times. It's very, very hard not to freak out. But all this mind stuff and harnessing the mind for the positive is to bring us back into alignment with spirit and intuitive self and higher self. But that requires the mind, body, and spirit. We have to work with all of it all the time. So I don't know if that makes sense, Loretta.
Yeah. I just want to add to that also. So in case you're ill and you're like, okay, well, it's too late for me. I've already got a diagnosis and I don't know how to do this, right? So just remember that disease is feedback. It doesn't matter what the label is. It's feeding back. It's literally a way that your unconscious is potentially speaking to you. And so I believe that as soon as you commit to start listening to the message, here's the thing, when you've got a diagnosis of a dread disease, you are super motivated to start watching your mind. Let's face it, okay? When you're completely well, you're somewhat less motivated, right? So, of course, we're humans. We're motivated when things aren't going well. So one of the huge benefits, this might sound counterintuitive, but one of the benefits of being ill is that essentially you're in a corner and it gets you to a point where you are highly motivated to actually start creating that gap and that pause. So that high degree of motivation, because you've got a lot of skin in the game, literally means that you fast track yourself along this process. So you don't have to be enlightened before you can heal, is really the point that I'm trying to make. Right? You just have to be committed to asking the question, or being prepared to go, you know what, actually, all right, what these women say makes sense. And I mean, we're not the only people who are saying this, and it's got to be like a whole mind, body, blah, blah, blah. And actually, I don't really know where to start. And actually, right now, I am freaking out. So the first step is to just acknowledge the truth of where you are. It's because if we don't do that, that's the same as what Antoinette said to me. If you just drop the glass and you don't get the insight from having dropped the glass, you don't learn anything from that, right? Then you just carry on dropping glasses, figuratively and literally, continually, right? Whereas when you get the insight, it helps to bring you back to your center. So when you get a diagnosis of a dread disease or a very serious disease, or something else happens that's shocking to you, I think it's unrealistic to expect, even if you've got a huge degree of awareness, for you to just actually flip the switch immediately if you've never had any prior practice with this. But so it's really important that you acknowledge where you are. What are the thoughts that you're having right now? So later on, Antoinette's going to give us some tools. And one of them is like, keep a thought journal. Yes, keep a thought journal. It's really useful. When you're freaking out, if you can recognize, and the freaking out, by the way, is just fear, right? So our minds are conditioned to respond to fear, because whatever threatens our survival activates our fear response. That's the primitive response. That's the hardwiring in your brain. So if you try and pretend that you're not fearful, or you feel you've got to keep it all together so that, because you've got to be positive, because if you allow a single negative thought in, then you're going to exacerbate your disease, right? I mean, that's not true right now in the moment, okay? So yes, of course, if you have negative loops of thinking, it is going to have an impact. But right now, you've got to get real with where you are. So if your thoughts are, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Why is this happening to me? I'm a good person. I don't want to die. Does this mean I'm going to die? Whatever your thoughts are, just be real about them. Record them, write them down. How are you feeling? You're terrified. You're under pressure. You don't know what to do. You want to please the authority figure. You don't want to hack the doctor off, but you also want a bit of space to just actually take a deep breath and assimilate all of this. So there's lots of conflicting stuff going on right there and then. So you know what? Can I tell you? your diagnosis is not going to change in 24 hours or even in a week. Probably not. It might, okay, but only in very, very rare occasions. So right now, just right now, if you can just like, where am I? You know what? I'm washing the dishes. I've dropped the glass. I'm upset because I dropped my favorite glass. Yes, acknowledge it. And once you've acknowledged it and you've got real with where you are, just the fact that you're not fighting the truth of what you're thinking and feeling. Because fighting what you're thinking and feeling just exacerbates the fight or flight reaction. So you can look as calm as a swan gliding across a lake, but you could be freaking out. And the facade you present is not what is the message. It's not the message you're sending your body. What's really going on in your being, what's really going on in your thoughts and your feelings, that's what's actually being transmitted to your body. So if you are real about that, you need to be real about that without allowing it to mean too many things. So it's a bit like you need to know where to like pull the plug, right? So when you notice that when you've recorded it and you've felt it now and you're like, okay, this is where I am, but I'm now starting to think, this is because I'm being a bad person. It's because I've been punished. It's because of that one thing that I did when I was 20 it's unforgivable. That now you're starting to make it mean something. That it's at that point where you go, you know what? Okay, I've come to the truth of where I am, and now I'm creating meaning when actually I can't actually substantiate this because I actually don't know. As soon as you get into the I can't prove this, then you're down the rabbit hole, all right, of assumption and opinion. So it's important that we harness it. It's like, it sounds like we're saying different things all the time. We're not. It is important that you harness it, but not at the expense of acknowledging the truth of what exists for you right now. I broke the glass. The truth of breaking the glass is there's shattered glass all over your floor. You need to take a dustpan and a little brush, and you have to clean it up, and you have to dispose of the glass in a way that's not going to injure you or anyone else. Those are just the facts. That's what you've got to do, So it's really important to acknowledge the reality of where you are.
Yeah, and so the thoughts create our perceptions, and it's and the mind determines how we view things. So it's very, very hard when you're sitting with a cancer diagnosis not to have a perception of like, well, this is really a big problem. I'm probably going to die. I'd be lying if I said I was terrified, absolutely terrified all the way through. Actually, it can get really, really scary. But at some point, if we do not recognize and acknowledge that terror and that freak out makes us 50% sicker, actually, and actually a real live example of that, we're going a bit all over the place with this, but hopefully these are all nuggets of great gold, is during COVID, I invited the COVID team from where I live to stay for free in my self-catering unit when they were allowed to have a break. And the psychiatrist came. In our city here, every single COVID patient on a ventilator had to see a psychiatrist. And she told me the reason is because when people couldn't breathe, the people that were really freaking out had a 50% higher chance of dying than those that weren't. Now, that is a real live statistic. So it's not that easy to not freak out. But when you're freaking out, like when I'm having an allergic reaction, I have to initially freak out because it's terrifying. And then I know, but I'm quite trained, I've been doing this for 8 years, is that I somehow have to access that point of stillness in me and that point of peace and calm, because that is my potential superpower to get through this without it completely taking me out. And that can actually happen in a nanosecond, whether you're trained or untrained. And as Loretta said, if you're sick now and you're facing a big diagnosis, don't think you have to have done 30 years of work. Because how this actually can work, when your back's really against the wall, as Loretta says, that's when you have no choice but to tap into that part of you that is who you really are. So when I've been in an airplane crash, an emergency landing, I've had this brutal cancer, I'm having these horrible allergic reactions on and off now. Do you know that it's at those moments when I've had no choice but to go, what, in a near, my car's breaking down on the highway. In South Africa, you don't want to do that. It's very dangerous. And I'm like, well, I carry on freaking out and it's not going to help anything. It's going to all bomb out worse because I can't stay centered. Or right now, I tell myself, just try this. If you're really up against the wall, okay, because this is a daily practice and it takes time, but if you're really up against the wall, you tell yourself, right now, I have the choice to be calm, because that part of you is always there. That part of you who is really you is always there, even though it doesn't seem there. So if you're in big crisis, you just command your body. That's how we can use our minds. You can say, right now, I need you to access that part of me right now because I'm in trouble. And if I can suddenly drop into that peace, I'm sure anybody can. But the interesting thing is, in my daily life, with the washing the dishes and the dogs barking and the lawnmowers, I find to this day, 8 years later, that's when I'm freaking out, you know, right? Because the stakes aren't that high. When you've got a mind like mine, well, everybody's got a mind like mine, but mine's 100,000 times worse. So be grateful for your mind, okay? If your mind's relatively peaceful, is that I start just freaking out about everything. And then I'm like, but when the stakes are really high, I've proven that you can drop in a nanosecond into that. So if the stakes are really high for you, just try it. It's worth trying. That's how fast it can happen. And actually, I think what Loretta's saying, we always say the same thing in different words, is the outcome we're really looking for here with mastering our mind and emotions is to see a glass of water not as half full or half empty, but it's just a glass of water, actually.
100%.
Our mind constantly wants to do this. It's that or it's this. It's good or it's bad. It's just a glass of water.
Yeah.
It's just a broken
100%.
glass. It needs to be cleaned up. Yeah. So I think we're exactly on that same page. So before we go into, let's go into some solutions maybe. This is such a big topic. I think we're going to have to do a few master classes and workshops, because this is something you really have to drill down into to start living it and embodying it. But just know over and over again that a thought changes your energy. So as Loretta said earlier, and I kind of disagreed, but I didn't, is takes you away. If you don't catch it, it takes you away from the intuitive part, from the God part. It really can. One thought. And it also affects your physical body. I can tell you right now, the mind is the cause and the body is the effect. I see that every single day of my life. And the other thing I can tell you as a truth, it's a lived truth for me, is that every thought counts. Every single thought counts. And thoughts can have instant reactions. Okay, Loretta wants to weigh in.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I've just got a caveat, all right? Because I've heard this so many times. And in fact, I've got a client that I started working with relatively recently who has a type of cancer. And one of the things he said to me was, I can't let a single thought in. Now, so well, like, you can't stop your thought, okay? So I'm not disagreeing with what Antoinette says, but I think what happens is this. So think of this analogy.
Right.
You know those very, very, very long escalators, you know, like you get in an underground, okay? If you get on the escalator that's going down and you realize the minute you step on, you realize, oh, I'm on the wrong escalator. You've got time to turn around, put on a burst of speed, and you can get to the top. You can reverse it, right? So the quicker you can catch the thoughts, right? Because by the time we're freaking out, the thinking feeling loop has been going on for a long time. By the time we get to freak out, right? We've had to have a couple of thoughts linked to emotions that the thoughts cause in order to get to the place where we're freaking out. So we're already halfway down the escalator. So the true mastery is about, well, it's two steps. If you realize you're halfway down the escalator and there's no way you can turn around and run up against the escalator, now you're never going to get to the top. You're just going to carry on futilely running like you're on a hamster wheel until eventually you're going to be so exhausted, you're going to get you're going to fall down the escalator and you're going to end up crumbled at the bottom, right? Okay, so if you're halfway down the escalator, when you acknowledge where you are, I'm on the wrong escalator, these are my thoughts and feelings, what you can do is you can ride down the escalator so that you can get off the escalator in one piece and then find the escalator that you want to go up, okay? Whereas when you're unable to do that and you are fighting against it because you're not even aware of what the thoughts are, you end up exhausted and you fall down the escalator. So the key here is when you have a first negative, when you recognize your negative thought, it isn't the first thought you've had. It might actually be the 1,000th thought you've had. You're just noticing it now because now it's created enough of an emotional reaction that you are actually freaking out, or a physical reaction. All right. So the reason why I mention this is because the better you get at this, the earlier you're going to recognize the thoughts.
Yes, brilliant.
You can use the escalator. Okay. And so I don't want you to get to that idea that if you have a single negative thought, you're making yourself sicker, because that's terrifying. What that does is it increases the terror. So it does, okay, but it actually also doesn't. If that makes
Loretta,
sense.
that is such a fundamental truth. So thank you for taking what I said. We have to be very careful what we say, because what I said is true. Every thought counts, but the point is you can't be scared of your thoughts. And in fact, that's one of the tricks and the tools I've got here for us to speak through.
So let's talk about that one first, since we're talking about it now.
Well, I'd like to actually give you a quote from a woman. No, I'm not going to give you a quote from Pearl Buck. Actually wrote this. And the thing is, if you are able to see all of your thoughts, because some of them are not going to be so nice, I can promise you right now, and you can be with all of them. It's the same as the emotional stuff when we talked about them, and have a compassionate awareness towards that thought. This has been so big for me. It's such a crux. It's such an important part of this work, which people don't put out there by and large. They all go like I just, every thought counts. Catch your thoughts. It's not that simple. And if you knew what thoughts went through my head, you would be scared for me. But what I've learned to do now, and it's taken me years, so we're short-circuiting this for you, is to go, like this morning, I could see my mind and I was freaking out. And then my body was reacting. But the real tool lies in going, okay, mind, we're freaking out. And we're freaking out. And that's okay. Because what I used to do in the past is fucking freak out because I'm freaking out. So Loretta, 100%. That is so important what you said, especially when you're sick. If you get a brutal diagnosis and you are not scared, you are not normal. If you get a brutal diagnosis and your thoughts don't go to I'm going to die a horrible death, you're not normal. We have to be able to do that and sit with compassionate self-awareness with that. And it's not easy in the beginning. Don't think this just happens. But if you can, absolutely, you have to think every single thought, no matter how bad they are, because when you squash them down and put them back in the box and tell them to shut up and get out the way, that's when they really cause hell.
And I just want to add to that. A lot of the judgment of our thoughts happens like on autopilot, and it's generally when we have a thought that's counter to our conditioning. So let's just say that you come from a very strongly Christian background, for argument's sake. I'm just going to use this as an example. And one of your thoughts is, I hate you, God, for letting me get sick. I mean, that is completely not allowed. It's not okay, right? Based on your spiritual and religious beliefs. But here's the thing, if you've thought it, you've thought it. This is hard, okay? Because we've been so indoctrinated, not just about being positive, but like what are the right thoughts and what are the wrong thoughts? And so initially, and this is where this compassion, and I'm going to say non-judgment, because I think we are truly in compassion when we're not judging. All right. So, can I feel empathy enough for myself? Can I be compassionate enough to appreciate how terrifying I am? that I'm now actually even lashing out at God and going against all my programming and what I believe to be true religiously and spiritually. That is not necessary for me. I'm sitting, and I mean, maybe I picked a controversial example, but those are the ones that stick in people's minds. If this is like a cry for, dear God, I'm so desperate right now, because this is how desperate I feel. And when we talk about like in relationships, vulnerability is about being honest about like where you really are. And so we all know about vulnerability from the work of Brené Brown, and I mean, it's amazing. But vulnerability requires brutal honesty, actually. And not that you're brutal to the other person, that you're honest about where you are and what you're feeling. And so that's vulnerability, that being able to be honest with yourself about what you're feeling. If you have the thought, I'm a complete waste of skin because I broke the glass, and you're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be saying that about myself because, I'm supposed to be growing into the person that I want to be, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, you know what? Can you have compassion for the fact that you could have a thought like that about yourself without judging it? So thoughts are, what I do, and I'm quite a logical kind of person, right? And so my issue is I'm happy to appreciate my thoughts. I'm not so great with my feelings. Those I have to practice harder with. But I'm like, I see my thoughts as merely the facts of what's going on in my mind right now. So if my thought is, I hate you and I hope you die, which is also an awful thought, isn't it? As I say that, I can feel the reaction in my body about what a bad girl I'm being. Now, Antoinette, I'm not saying this to you. I'm just saying this, If my thought...
No, that's how it is. That's how it is.
If someone has done something to me that's so awful, or they've done something to someone I love, and I'm like, I hate you and I wish you could be hit by a bus. I hope karma gets you, okay? I mean, those are not nice thoughts, right? But the thing is, they are my thoughts. And so if I see them as being purely the fact that my mind is having that thought, not that that thought means I am a terrible person. No meaning.
Yeah, but it's very, very hard not to ascribe meaning to. I think that's the outcome we're looking for on this journey in life. So the thing is, as soon as you do start subscribing meaning, so this actually has taken me so many years. So I don't think we even need to go further than this in this episode, because this is pure flipping gold that you don't easily get out there. And it's taken me a long time down this 8-year path, because it does go in different stages and phases to know the most. And I think Loretta brought some awareness of this to me, is that my thoughts are so rough, and I'm not the only one, because if you've had a trauma in utero childhood, we don't keep on going back to trauma to get you stuck in it or to say everything's about trauma. But if you've had a trauma, you have to understand that it's created a brain wiring and a habitual way, unconscious way of thinking and feeling that you have no control over or choice until you really start working with it. And when you do start working with it, it sometimes gets harder. So it's not your fault. But the hardest thing is when you do start becoming self-aware and you bring the unconscious into conscious awareness, like me, and your habitual thoughts and the consequent feelings are, is like, I'm just not good enough, and I just shouldn't be here, and I've messed up again, and I'm never going to show up, and I'm going to die unloved, and don't think I'm some messed up human being. Well, I am in a way, but
we all have that.
we all have that. And if you've had trauma, you have it in truckloads. So the biggest thing we're going to bring to you today, because it's been an absolute turning point for me, is, am I okay with that thought and feeling? Antoinette, right now you're doing that thing again. And for me, often the feelings come up even before the thoughts. If you've had very deep trauma, the unconscious feelings come up before you even have a thought. And I'm like, okay, what am I feeling? So can I sit with that feeling? Can I know that it feels like the truth for me right now? Because one of the biggest problems out there, I'm going to just say it straight, even if they hang me and string me up, is that we've been spiritualized, socialized, conditioned, and the self-help world has told us to bypass that.
100%.
And you can't. It doesn't matter how much. We have to meditate, okay, and do our exercise and eat properly and have our nervous system calm, because all of that creates enough of a stable system, body, mind, and soul, that enables us to observe these thoughts and deal with them and do all the stuff we're talking about. But that in and of itself is not going to do the work moment by moment that I've just mentioned now and Loretta's mentioned.
I just want to bring what you've just said back to the escalator example. The fitter and the stronger I am, the faster I can run back up the escalator.
That is brilliant.
The less fit, and that even if I am in terrible physical shape, right? Even if I'm only 3 steps down from the top of the escalator, I'm never going to get back to the top. So the all these things that we do, the meditation and the yoga practice and the self-awareness and the journaling and the whatever it is that you do, all right? The balancing our energy and eating the food and doing the fast or whatever. All of that makes you better at running back up the escalator. But you know what? It doesn't stop you from getting on the wrong escalator. So if you're getting on the wrong escalator day after day after day, you spend your whole life running up against an escalator that's trying to go down. And you can be super fit. You're still running up the same escalator, which means that you're not actually creating what you'd love. So your life cannot really change. So it's important. The fitter you are, the faster you can run up the escalator. But once you've run up the escalator, it's important to recognize that you don't have to get onto the wrong escalator every single time. The escalator that's going to the place that you don't want to go.
Yeah, it's quite something, this. It's not an easy thing to articulate, actually, because we're going to maybe, if you're going to keep on getting on the wrong escalator. And the thing is, the more you get on the wrong escalator and recognize that, and the fitter you are to get off it, the closer and closer you are to getting to enlightenment and physical healing or whatever it is that you're looking for, because it's only through repeating the same things over and over, seeing them and accepting them for what they are, hopefully without the self-judgment, but the awareness. You see, we can't bypass the awareness. We have to know, like I did this morning, I've been freaking out. And my mind can freak out. I can tell you right now, I can put a piece of food in my mouth and I can go, oh, well now, and it's unconscious. Now you could have an allergic reaction, and I don't even notice I've had that thought until my body's starting to get some allergy reaction. And then I'm going, why was I actually thinking when I ate that? Because I'm on a very clean diet at the moment. It's like, oh, my mind, it's so automatic what our minds do. So having the awareness, realizing what we've just done, not being upset with ourselves, feeling it, accepting it, even hating ourselves for a nanosecond, if that's what you need to do, or even 10 minutes. Sometimes I just say to myself, I'm going to have to sit with this for half an hour or 10 minutes or 3 days. It doesn't happen that long anymore. But
I just tell myself I'm going to give myself permission to have a tantrum for as long as I need to have a tantrum, but I'm not going to do anything else. As in, like, I'm not going to take an action from my tantrum. Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to make a plan for my tantrum. I'm just going to let my 3-year-old throw her toys out of the cot, not at anyone else, just with me and her, just this us. We're just going to do that. And sometimes I say to my husband, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm having a tantrum. Maybe you should just actually not talk to me for the next 3. When I'm done, I'll come out of the room and I'll tell you it's over, right? And he's like, well, oh, okay, fine. So it's important that we give ourselves that space. And ironically, the more you do that, I think the shorter the tantrums last, or the freakouts, or whatever we want to call them. Just the act of giving yourself the permission helps to calm your nervous system down already. I
love that, because I thought it was just me that had to use that tool. No, I'm seriously. It's like if you just allow that, because it's the little child, it's the wounded 100%. Part of ourselves, or the conditioned part that's going, it's now. This morning I was freaking out, and I've got to a point now where I catch my freak out and I don't shout at the dog, or I start freaking out, but it's taken me a long time to get to this point. But I do allow myself the freak out because I've spent my whole life trying to bypass that little 5-year-old, and my little 5-year-old can do tantrums. You don't. Yeah, this is brilliant. So, Loretta, maybe we should just leave it at that. We can always add on to this and add on because it's big.
I think that's enough for today.
Yeah. Okay, sure. If you've got any questions or you need any clarity or you want us to offer some master classes where we can be more structured and deep, because these are deep dive topics, and please give us some feedback. And we're getting more and more incredible feedback about this podcast, which does help feed our egos a bit, motivate us to keep going. But most of all, it's given us what we already knew on a deep soul intuitive level is that this is very valuable. So please share it. We don't have any other agenda, although we would like it if you made us very famous so we can get very rich.
Yes, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Loretta, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye.